Okay, welcome to the very first episode of the Tallawah Table. And this is Reggae Online's first podcast, first and only so far, podcast. And I'm here with my good friends and collaborators, Neila Ebanks,
Hmm.
who is, well, she's just brilliant. There's a whole bunch of things. You meet her. You'll meet her today. And I'm sure some of you have met her before. And my other good friend who I've known since I was 11, Michael Holgate, another
Hola.
cultural brain. And, you know, this is the brain trust, the cultural brain trust, to have them here
Amen.
today. So, what we're talking about today, guys, we're talking about cultural spaces. This is our first thing. We're talking about ourselves as well and how we fit into these and how we are, because Neila said before, she's a cultural space. And I said, I'm a big cultural space.
Big and beautiful.
A big and beautiful and diverse cultural space. So, yeah, here we are. The Tallawah Table.
The Tallawah Table. Yeah.
What a beautiful word that is, Tallawah. That word. I wonder what's the etymology of that word, Tallawah, because it means when we say Tallawah, we mean we're little, but with Tallawah, that means that we're strong, we're powerful, we're great, and all of us coming from this island of Jamaica, but with different backgrounds that you can see in our features and our skin tone and our hair and our everything. And so this Tallawah Table is a space where all of that multicultural barbecue, as Michael Harris used to say, comes to the fore,
Yeah. There's a way in which sometimes the Tallawah title stresses me out, in the sense that Tallawah kind of means this resilience, which means then we're not supposed to also have space for our softness or have space for our peace. But at the same time, I take great pride in the Tallawahness of what we know as Jamaicanness. It is one of the things, for example, that kept running through me when I was in other places studying, when I had to be translating myself over and over again to different persons of different cultures, when I had to be defending even some of my cultural legacies that were coming through the works that I was making in my master's program. And they must say to me, well, that's a little dated. I said, but no, that's how we do it where I come from. And so that Tallawahness, and it's not just me, a number of people who have, traveled the globe, who are Jamaican, have that kind of, I don't know, it's not like a rock, it's not solid, but it's an ever evolving kind of like, we're good. And anywhere you drop us, we are there solidly. You could have dropped us in the bad, we're good in the bad too. but we're good.
Unfortunately, we must add.
Right. So I'm glad we chose to call it the Tallawah Table. We're making our own table. We're building our own space, our own platform to discuss ourselves.
Even while recognizing that we are, standing on the shoulders of, I don't want to just say cultural greatness, but we are standing on the shoulders of cultural greats, people like Nettleford and various others who have done stuff that has created a big platform for Jamaica in the world. Louise Bennett Coverley, and so we're grateful for that. As you say, that Tallawahness. Maybe we should have called that this episode the Tallawah Table, Tallawahness, something. I don't know. But we are talking about cultural spaces, and I like what Neila says that.
Oh no, I was saying we're gonna need a glossary.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We can put it in the notes.
Absolutely.
For me, the Tallawah thing also means that we're greater than the sum of all our parts too. It feels that way. That there's all these things that make us up, but we're not any one of those things. We're something else, something bigger. And it's not something bigger that is the same for everybody either, because we all express it so differently. So which is great.
So I said it before, but I'm looking at us now. So I'm looking at us on the screen, and I'm just thinking of I think all of us have Indian. I like to go to race and ethnicity. So that's something I go back there. But it's interesting. All of us have the African in us. I don't know if any. I think Michael has the European in him, but all of us have the Indian in us. I didn't. I don't know if you know that my maternal grandfather is full-fledged Indian from India. Yes. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. But and Mike, you probably have Chinese. So Neila, you have any Chinese in you?
What I will say to you is that, all right, hear this now. Like how my father come from Saint Elizabeth, everything mixed up in there. So
everything mixed up in
if
there.
you look at his siblings, everybody looks different. The facial features are the same, but the phenotypical things are different. The hair is a little bit different. The eye color is different. I have an auntie who has red hair and like hazel eyes. So even the Indianness of his physicality could never be traced back to an actual ethnic connection. I would have to really do like one of those DNA tests to see what the mix is. And it's interesting too, because even in terms of my mother's parents biologically, I don't know them, so I've never seen them, so like we don't know. So I literally one mix up and blender. It looks something, but I can't tell you is what, because I don't know the breakdown. So at least me have my nationality for draw for, because and at the very least, I am black. There we go. African Caribbean, African Jamaican, mix up Jamaican.
And I love how all of those ethnicities tie into not just skin tone and physical things, but the culture that we are here talking about, because the Tallawah-ness of this culture is really that combination, that of course, a stronger infusion of the African because of the, or maybe not even that, but just demographically more African people. But but that mix up and blender thing, which makes us Caribbean, is just so interesting, and so obviously so powerful, which is why we've had this impact on the world stage in various spheres. Even the fact that we run so fast, the fact that our political thinkers have made such impact, the fact that our language artists have done such great things, our musicians have done such great things, so many of our Caribbean people have had this impact on the globe. I remember a long time ago, there's a guy who came. He was a mystic teacher, and he said that Jamaica is a glandular spot on the globe. And for me, that's just powerful, because it says that, like your glands secrete things to tell your body how to react to this, how to get rid of this, and so this glandular spot on the globe, this Jamaica, is a powerful space because it is triggering things in the globe. And you can see that in how Marcus Garvey did what he did. You can see it in how Usain Bolt did what he did. You can see it in Mary Seacole and how her life impacted. You can hear it in Bob Marley. You can see it in so many people, and so there's something about this place called Jamaica, good and bad. The of course the gang here and the other
good too,
but and I think that's true. That's what you said a little bit earlier as well, Neila. When we're good, we're bad, we're good at that too.
Good, bad. I'm thinking though that Tallawah actually, Tallawah is something.
We're good.
I would call the region Tallawah. I would really call the Caribbean region Tallawah. There's a way in which, because we weren't supposed to survive this long and have so many of those who were oppressed still have any kind of cultural or DNA biological traces, that wasn't part of the project. Sort of the mere fact that we are still existing in this archipelago is the Tallawah-ness. I mean, I know it's nice to say, I'm a willing about Tallawah and it's on, but the truth of the matter is when you look at individual Caribbean nations, when you look at the region as a whole, we're a little bit, but we make big statements. We make very, very big statements. I wish, to be honest with you, that we would understand how large we really are energetically and make bigger statements in a more forceful way, right? We have leaders who do that, right? Big up. Prime Minister Motley. But at the same time, I mean, she for me evidences the Tallawahs of the entire Caribbean, because everybody have a family member, have a friend, have a community member, sit down in themselves, know themselves, know what to do, can lead, can follow. And I think it's a characteristic of a space, a geographical space.
Right. And I would include the so-called Latin America. I would include Central and South, because apart from the language or the languages, it's so we really are all connected, in a very deep and profound way.
Yeah,
I would unapologetically say that Mia is becoming the Marcus Garvey of our times. You know,
wow, that's a heavy statement, you know, Michael.
Statement. You know, I'm back not that broad, you know, but we just say it, so we say it. You know,
but she's very bold and brave in the stuff that she says.
Becoming, because she's courageous enough to step out and, you know, with doing certain things, saying certain things. Some of them not so politically in tune with what she should be saying, but others, you know, is what she should have been saying, or what our leaders should have been saying all along. So, you know, she's really doing some stuff. So yeah, another Tallawah lady, I can really say. You know, of course she studied in Jamaica. We're not from the Bajans, but she studied in Jamaica.
And she was Professor Dilford's protege.
Right.
When she was I think Minister of Culture in a previous government. Yeah, man. So she has her grounding in cultural things. And I think, I mean, if I can do a segue, I think one of the things that has made us so Tallawah, not just as a nation, but as a region, is the cultural things. It's not any of the other things. It's the cultural things, where they think about the cultural things as the artifacts, or the cultural things as the culinary artifacts, or the cultural things as a handing down of the ways that we deal with each other, or the ways that we heal each other, in terms of, you know, the ways of life that were carried down through that resilience, because we had to hold on to something, to hold on to that sense of self, based upon what the colonial project wanted to do with our ancestors. And so yeah, a lot of the Tallawahs that we have comes from that cultural connection, that cultural resilience, those vestiges, you know, of things that were kept and are kept in us. So even if we don't know, like me, don't necessarily know the ethnic background to a T, there are resiliences that came through culturally that help me remember that I am Jamaican and I'm Caribbean and I'm supposed to be Tallawah. Things not supposed to phase me in a certain kind of way, you know. And I think
you know, one of the things that I recognize, and I recognize with us, but there's some of us who didn't have the grounding that we have, and they travel, and it's almost like chameleons. They will take on whatever is given to them and become whatever it's suggested that they should be or should become. And I mean, I can speak for myself. I mean, I've been in those spaces where someone has tried to tell me who I should be, or what I'm supposed to be expressing, and it just never take. Not only did it not take, I was very resistant. I was very resistant to that, and it wouldn't take because I wouldn't allow it to take. So, you know, and I'm sure it's the same for both of you as well, in the space that you've been, because I know you've all been all over the place, and what you take away from those spaces is only what makes who you are stronger. You haven't become something else because of your experience in those spaces. As we transition to cultural spaces, but
here's a question, right? Do you think that there's any space within this kind of Tallawahness to also be a chameleon?
Well, yes.
You think that skill is something that
but that is Anansi too. That is a part of the Anansi thing, which is who we are. And I feel like
it's
there's
like
a spectrum.
I mean, the code switching and the and the knowing how to translate and to whatever to move through a space. But what I was talking about is sometimes a chameleon that becomes permanently something else. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's a mythical shapeshifter, and there's this continuum. There is the spectrum between what is appropriate and what is Tallawah. But it's all the Tallawah line, but appropriateness, what is rebelliousness, what is revolutionary, all of them are on the same Tallawah line. But the good thing is that we need to know at any point in time what is the most effective way of becoming in this moment. What is the most effective way of being, ourselves, ironically, because sometimes you have to hide yourself to be yourself. Sometimes you have to put on a mask. I think it was Shakespeare, so a different thing. Or Shakespeare, we put on a face to meet the faces that we meet, so we put on that mask and we put on this thing and then we present ourselves, while all the while underneath that mask, we are representing ourselves and staying true to who we are, but we are presenting ourselves to ensure that our kids can survive. Representing ourselves to ensure that tomorrow we are alive. And then sometimes, we have to just take off the mask, show ourselves, and jump into the ocean to show that, all right, we're willing to die for this thing, or light a fire, or whatever it is, burn the house down just to show that eventually we have to become the greatest version of ourselves, which is not enslaved people, and which is not indentured people, and which is not people who enslave others, because the greatest version of ourselves, of our collective selves, is a higher thing, a higher being, So yeah, Tallawah.
Can I please ask?
We're becoming Tallawah, really becoming Tallawah on that spectrum.
I would love to see that spectrum as a diagram. Like I want to see those ranges of possible behaviors, and kind of like how I could almost even see it like on an Anansi web, and sort of kind of figuring out which one you use, which one you choose when, and you shape shift just so that you're making sure that you are continuing your lineage or continue your ability to see another day. I love it.
But it's also like a series of agreements and treaties that we're brokering in the different places.
Always,
and some of them are temporary and some of them aren't, and
Oh, I love it.
And all of those lines, I was thinking of a circle, Neila, but I think that it's not so much a circle, it's more like the Anansi web, and these diverse lines that are joined or interconnected are all moving center. To be eaten by the spider, but the spider here is not something killing us. It's the spider, that shapeshifter, which is telling us that we are everything and we can be everything. That shapeshifter which says that we are our house beyond belief. So
I think we are the spider. We're the spider. We're moving through this web. This is the web we've woven.
We're making
the web, and we're moving through it. That is what So there's no danger.
A lot of people, I like the fact that we're so positively reinforcing the Anansi and the spider thing, because a lot of people misunderstand Anansi. They think that Anansi is only referring to the negative part of our culture, the people them who rule, and the people them who rock every system and stuff like that. But I think that Anansi was there to do certain things in order to, it's a part of that same thing that we're talking about, survival, right? But we need to now discuss and discover as a people what is or who is Anansi now. Because if Anansi is a shapeshifter, what does he shift to now, right now? Now that, the whole idea of enslavement is not a thing which is our physical reality. Even if we're saying, yes, there's still mental slavery and so on. But what does Anansi shapeshift to now in order to further represent us as Jamaican people, as Caribbean people, as people who look like me and you and Michael and, who is Anansi now within all of us? Because Anansi is within all of us for sure.
I'm telling you. Absolutely.
So to add to that, Mike, I think one of the things that we've been breaking down maybe the past few years, because we've been so used to this superhero thing of good and there's good and there's bad, and some people are good and some people are bad. And I mean, and that's, you know, what we've been convinced, especially when people go to war, that, oh, these are the good guys and they're the bad guys, but there's no such thing. And so we've been breaking down this thing of there's ultimate and there's good and there's ultimate and there's bad, but everybody have a little bit of everything in them, and at some point you're going to be one or the other. And so I think sometimes in our anansiness, sometimes we do need to be this person that make a little trouble.
Of course.
And sometimes we need to be the person that is really following the rules and what. And I think it's good to be able to walk that line and to hop to the left when you need to and hop to the right when you need to. And I think that is how we are being as an answer. And sometimes we know when to say what we need to say and when to shut up. And you know, and so it's and those are very important life skills that not everybody have. So
it's a dexterity that you need, you know, to live. And I think one of the greatest legacies was Anansi, in terms of how Anansi passed down to us and to other Caribbean spaces coming from Ghana. You know, the Anansi stories are stories that are supposed to teach you how to flex, how to be smart, how to be agile in your mind, you know, so that you can continue, so that you can have legacy, so that you can thrive. All of those stories show Anansi, who is the smallest, the tiniest, who is supposed to be and whose web, if you really have to try hard for mash down a spider web can blind you, you know what I mean? So it is, I mean, I'm so glad that the legacy exists still. I worry though, and I guess as we kind of segue into the idea about cultural spaces, what I worry about is that, you see, when I said to both of you, you know, I am a cultural space. That's good, and that's good. And I know myself as a cultural space, meaning I hold things cultural. Everything I do helps to create culture, because culture is dynamic and it has to do with, you know, how people live every day. But when I die as a cultural space and all of that dies within me, the majority of it might die within me. Yes, I may still do a book or I might do a film or so on, but there are certain things that die within me. If I don't have enough spaces and areas to be able to communicate that and share that and transmit that context that is supportive of the transmission of that kind of cultural stuff, we're really going to have a lot of persons with cultural and institutional memory who that dies with them when they leave this plane. I think of things like Kumina practice. I think of other traditional kind of forms, which are either worship forms or social forms that right now are even changing shape, and some are joining forces. I think of some that don't have any people within their communities who are interested, young people anymore, in continuing those kind of traditions. And without physical spaces, and you don't already have, so you're not having the personal cultural space to carry it somewhere else. And you don't necessarily have the physical spaces to ensure at least not just archiving, but longevity. These things just pass. And remember, the universe don't like a vacuum. So when that go, something have to fill it. And I'm concerned that so many things, because there's so many influences outside, and we are so permeable, you know, in this nation in particular, that there are things that are going to come in, and before you know it, memory shot, and you don't even know that some of those very Tallawah things, and it's happening. You know, so your own sense of yourself. Everything is just becoming like a melange. And not to say I don't like globalization, not to say I'm not all about, like, you know, what's new and fresh from all parts of the globe, and you can pick and choose from wherever according to how it resonates with you. But there's a certain way in which having spaces that understand the dynamism and the dynamic nature of culture is not to be pinned down underneath a glass case. And the fact that it is always in threat of changing and moving, and the fact that there are certain things that we have to hold sacred and carry so that we can still hold this name Tallawah 100 years down the line. That I don't think is in the national consciousness for me. I don't think so. And it really concerns me.
Yeah. And I think the things like that in the national consciousness or in any consciousness is is who we are, meaning all three of us. We are storytellers, and it's the stories that hold it. It's not really so much the politics or the political thing. It's the stories that hold these things in the consciousness. And so, what we should really be developing more of is storytellers who are conscious of these dynamic things of representation of who we are, because if we hold on to these things or we push these things in our stories, they cannot die. And I don't just mean stories in terms of the storyteller who go out there and tell a Nancy story. I mean filmmakers, I mean theater practitioners, I mean songwriters and performers and visual artists, all of it. Those storytellers are holding the culture in their grasp and sharing it and sending it down the millennia for others to say, oh, this is who we are, to remember. And so even the spiritual aspect of who we are is held in place by the stories that we tell about ourselves and the stories that we use to represent our culture.
What do the storytellers need? What do our storytellers need in 2024?
$1 billion. We just get that from Phil.
Which dollars? Which dollars we're talking now?
$1 billion for film.
Which currency?
Propaganda is party. But there's a $1 billion thing that I'm excited about from this current government for film. We've never had anything like that before. And so I think that financing the arts is an extremely integral and important part of giving storytellers a platform and a voice and helping them to develop their voice and helping them to develop their platform,
So I think one of the things that I would love to see with the storyteller thing is to expand the idea of what it means to be a storyteller, but also to integrate the arts in every aspect of life, whether it's construction, whether it's whatever, because we just lost Neila. Hope she'll come back on.
Yeah, she's coming back.
The storytelling thing. I think if you've heard me say this before, Mike. Like I'd love to see murals and stuff on the highways and functional sculptures that make sound when you drive or whatever, because the stories can be that way and they can be permanent in a sense. Because if we have murals of Anansi along the new highway on the walls as you drive that make a sound depending on the wind or whatever, that is it's gonna mean something else to the culture than just somebody who go to a venue to open a book and tell a story. That will have people engaging and asking questions. What is that? And what does that mean? And where is it from? And why is it there? And that kind of stuff. But also
those things are triggers.
Yeah, but also you wake up and you go outside your house and you see this 50-foot statue of Marcus Garvey. It's gonna mean something different, and it will mean something in terms of how you think about who you are and where you fit in the world, than just something you hear in a history class, in third form or whatever.
Neila, I think Neila is trying to come back on. So
okay, as soon as she comes back.
All right. I really love that, Mike. And yes, you've always been saying that, and I think that it's such a powerful thing, because those things that's what the artist does. That's what the storyteller does. The storyteller triggers us. The storyteller presents us with opportunities to reflect.
Right.
And it's in reflecting that we grow. You're not growing when you're doing all of this running up and down, but when you pause, you say, oh, that's interesting. Oh, wonder what that means. Or wow, that just gave me an emotional pull or a tug a while ago. That type of reflection is what triggers us to say, you're feeling something you never felt before as you're going through your daily life, your mundane life, And once those things are all in place, we're good. Neila is back. Yeah. I missed you. Like, that was a minute of pain.
I know. For me, I was like, what's happening? Is that me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they I'm not going to call no name, but I don't know what the company is up to.
Right.
The red one. But anyway, what I miss? What did I miss? So
we're just talking about the fact that we and Mike was talking about trigger. Well, I call it trigger. The fact that you wake up and you look outside. He wants to see art in like you said, you're better at saying
well,
this is what these
so I was wanting to say like huge sculptures and things, murals on the highways, and because I think that creatives and artists need to frame the lives of everybody. Like if I go to Kingston and take a picture, something in the background should say I am in Kingston and this is a part of this culture that that I happen to be in at the moment.
Yes.
You know, if I turn on the radio, if I go to the store, something, I'm walking down the street, some sculpture should be making music or turning and giving me a visual excitement, something, you know, and those things need to the stories that we tell and the histories that we have shouldn't just be in a history book in a classroom and third form. It shouldn't just be a thing that GIS shows. We should be living it. We should be living all those things. You know, if I'm going through a park, there should be a sculpture of a river mama or something. You know, those things that we say, oh, this is ours, this is us, this is me, this is all part of who we are.
So that is really saying then that, you know, culture is this broad thing, yeah? And then the creative arts, so we're really talking about that intersection between the culture and the artist who is representing that culture, and how much our platform, politicians and governments and business people can give to these artists to put this culture there. So because when a nation is creative and highly creative and channeled it and focused in a particular way, they can't help but prosper. Everybody's going to benefit. Everybody's going to. If you think about the Japanese, they are technology people. They are particularly good at this thing, and so them running with this thing, and it benefits them in a particular way. You know, Germans and their architecture, and so on and so on and so forth. We have this creativity that is born from that merging of our cultures, this heavy base African culture on top of it, this Indian culture on top of it, this Chinese culture on top of it, this European culture, and all of it is in this one melting pot that has come through this thing, you know, this meeting of minds, this meeting of hearts, this meeting of souls, this these encounters. And although encounters sound like it's a nice word, and you know, it's not like they were greeting and shaking hands at the end. This culture, it was, you know, fractious and full of pain.
Sometimes
and so on.
And not just a pot.
Right.
Yeah, but now there's something that we have, you know, and we cannot capitalize on that thing that we have. Not just so we don't pay attention to redress and don't pay attention to address the wrongs and stuff like that. Because you know me, I'm big on reparations. Reparations time now. Reparations.
And I'm right there with you.
It's been.
So yeah. So what my thing is that, yeah, we just need to still, even while we are saying reparations now, we also need to say all of who we are is what can make us the biggest, best version of ourselves as Jamaicans and as Caribbean people.
I think one of the most terrible legacies, though, because you did say the encounters, of course, the encounters were terrible. They were horrible and reprehensible, right? And one of the worst legacies is that there have been a set of us in the region as well as in our individual countries in Jamaica who don't agree that some of those stories need to be told anymore, who don't see where there is value in remembering, you know, the coal stove, or in remembering certain melodies, or in remembering certain kinds of healing things, or in remembering certain kind of movements, and remembering certain kinds of religious practices. And there has been a consistent effort, even when enslavement ended, even when we became independent, because it's a head game. There's been that consistent effort to have us devalue those legacy things, the same things that we want to be able to tell the stories of now, the same things that actually are a part of, I guess I could call it, I'm just going to coin this now, like an internal cultural reparations for ourselves. Because reparations had to do with repair. And the things that we have been left are technologies that are supposed to be reparative technologies. Because the problem is we receive them through the fragmentation of terror. Think about it like that. You receive something through trauma. You're not remembering everything. You don't have everything. You have a splinter. So you take something like dancehall, and we know in our bones, in terms of dancehall movement, that the pelvis is extremely important to our vitality, right? We get that even from we got that even from how some of the traditional forms were left with us. So a dinky mini, and the purpose of dinky mini when used at a wake to make sure that people procreate and so on, coming from an African knowledge of the centrality of the pelvis, right? But in dance hall, it has been so fragmented, and it is under so many lenses, including a European lens that does not understand the importance of the pelvis, that has denigrated the importance of, and so there's this kind of cognitive dissonance. There's that, but there's also the generative possibility of the pelvis through dancehall cannot be realized. The reparative possibility of it can't be realized because we're so fragmented. We don't really understand it, and we're seeing it through a lens of also hating it.
And of slackness, you see
as slackness, right? And so we're in this place where it's almost like you can't move, because the thing that you know you're supposed to do, there's a part of your consciousness that is telling you.
Yeah, because we've been told that God and sex aren't in the same room.
Exactly.
So, that's not true.
And for me, those brokers who can assist the storytellers, because the dance hall is a big space of storytelling of very important stories in all of its various manifestations. Those who can assist in the telling of those stories don't believe that those stories are for reparations. They believe that those stories are hurtful, and those stories don't actually help us to move towards the kind of enlightenment that certain of our unnamed forefathers would have wanted us to move towards. And so we're grappling now with having these stories to tell and knowing the importance of it, not just because it's not even art for self-expression. There's that, individual self-expression, which is critical, yes, to your community. But also we know that these things that we are doing and making are healing things, healing frequencies, healing words in our prayers, healing in our plays, healing movements in our classes and in our workshops and our performances. But because you don't have the kind of backative philosophically from those who are holding certain power broking things, the billions, then it's almost as if who you're telling the stories for, is it going to still be a 1 by 1, 2 by 2 catch on to it? How do we get to a tipping point where the stories that we're telling are going to actually be able to make a certain kind of substantive change in our nation and our region? You know, is it that we're not telling the stories correctly to those people who are the holders of that kind of power, who are those brokers? Do we need to make some stories particularly for them to understand and to do the importance of it?
So I'm as you said that, I have a big problem with making stories for quote unquote them, because I think that's what we've been doing. That's what we've been doing our entire lives.
Right.
That's what we do with the tourism products. That's what we do with the music and what gets put out. We're doing it for what we think other people can appreciate, can absorb, can understand. And so we stifle so much of who we are and what we have to say, because they don't want, they can't handle that, or they don't want to hear that. What they want to see is this, and they want to see you with the dreadlocks, and they want to see you with saying it this way. But that's not us, and that's one of the reasons that I mean my accent. I don't know, maybe some people will tell me that my accent sounds American. I don't think it does. It sounds very Jamaican, but it doesn't sound like the Hollywood Jamaica, right? And so when somebody, but you don't sound Jamaican, I say, but I am very much so, and this is very much a Jamaican accent. And if you were there and you knew other people like me, you would know that this was Jamaican accent. Other Jamaicans would hear it and know it's Jamaica.
There are many accents.
So that's, for me, we need to be brave enough to just make the story and do the story the way we want and the way it's supposed to happen. And whoever needs to learn something else to be able to understand it, make them go learn. Let them go and take a course and go learn something so they can understand what we're putting out. But we're doing
the irony of it although is that so many of those same persons who hold these positions of power, they are artists. A lot of them are frustrated artists. A lot of them would have passed through certain societies of dance or societies of music,
You've got
chorals, choral groups. They would have passed
You're
through
right.
them. They go dance, meeting their dance hall, them playing at them church, them, and so they're artists. What is the disconnect? What is the disconnect where they don't see the value of the arts as something that can be pushed to not just represent us, not just to present us, but also to make us wealthy, to make us prosperous, to give back to the country, to give back to the people who are the original creators of these very things, which people find beautiful and sexy and exotic and interesting and exciting about us and who we are. What is the disconnect? What keeps them from seeing that this is the kind of investment that must be made in order to make it make sense? You know,
well, there are artists who don't see their own self-worth. That's the problem.
But that's the thing what that's been pushed into the artists as well. You know, so what is the so I mean, growing up, I don't think there's any of us whose parents automatically assume that because you're so good in the arts, oh, that's a career for you. If you're bright, you become a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or something. But you know, so when you have talent,
they might not have seen it, but we stuck with it because we saw it.
Or
either we saw it, or we decided that there was nothing else we were going to do. And we were stubborn enough to just keep on doing it. Some of those people who are in those positions who can make the policy change didn't really stick with it because they didn't believe. They kind of half-assed it, honestly. You know, it was a hobby for a lot of them. It became a hobby, and then they did the real thing and went into politics or went into business or went into wherever else. And so they still don't believe that what they produced and what they were doing had any worth.
Yeah.
And that's why they had to do something else. And so, if they don't believe that, they won't believe it for us either.
So, so because the system is skewed towards those who are not doing the arts, then those who are not doing the arts will make the money and then come and also look back and say, oh, it was nice that I did that, but now that I'm doing this real thing is the real thing. And so, you know, and so it's a cycle. It's a cycle.
But is
there anywhere in the world
cycle that
is there anywhere in the world that we can maybe look at and see that is different than this, that where there are artists who are also full-time artists, but they're also making the money or in positions where they can make the decisions along with the other people who are not artists? Are there places in the world where we can see that happening, where we can say, okay, maybe this is the way we can go forward?
There are a number of examples. You know, there are a number of examples. Unfortunately, many of those examples are in the kind of European metropole kind of space or in the North American space. You know, I spent some time in a residency in Canada, and one of the most impactful things for me, I have to say thank you, Kevin Ormsby, because he took me everywhere when I was there, was seeing how the grant system and the council system, the arts council system worked. And I was just in Toronto, like, you know what I'm saying, just in Ontario. I mean, you know, Canada vast and wide, and every one of the province them have one of the arts council them. And when you talk about the arts councils having the funding to be able to delineate and say, okay, so for these various categories of artists, there is money for you to train, to travel, to make work, to research. You don't even have to put on a show, you know, to teach some workshops, and everybody can get a piece of the pie. That is not a private entity. That is a governmental push that is largely also led and inspired and informed by the practitioners themselves, right? So I've seen where it worked. I've seen it work in Britain. No, these are problematic places because Britain go around the place and colonize everybody and take everybody money and things, right? And upon that rock, they were able to build a space that could offer to give money and funding for the arts, right? Even though you'd think, okay, well, the arts are the last thing you need to fund, but the truth is, them well I know say is if you win people with culture, you win them forever, which is what they did with ballet and so on from France, but that's another story. And then Canada also has its history of capturing indigenous lands and mashing up indigenous tribes and trying to, indoctrinate the children and so on. So those are problematic histories. And that's kind of like why I don't like to use those examples. But in terms of seeing where you can at least learn that there is a structure. There is a way in which you can, if you believe in it enough, and I strongly believe it's not for a private citizen or a private company to do that, because the art is public good in and of its own self. So, for example, just like what Mikey Harris was saying, when you have to make things or tell these stories to these particular people, a lot of times, at least the power broker people, a lot of times these stories come with showing them what immediate benefit they can get from the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The art don't have an immediate benefit.
Right. You have to turn it into a commodity.
You have to
commercial
commodify it
venture.
and commercialize it for them to even buy into that, because they are so very far removed from the artist in themselves or the curious person in themselves or the imagination of themselves. So it's kind of like we're really in a rough kind of place, because we know the important nature of the art as public good in and of itself, for its own self. It doesn't have to be pretty. In fact, sometimes it needs to be ugly. It needs to be public. It should be interactive. Those same big sculptures should be things that people are sleeping on.
Yep.
That they're kissing
It
their
doesn't have to be
love
sellable.
on. It must not be. It doesn't have to be sellable, and there has to be funding for that. But that has to be understood by those who are in charge of governing a space.
Right.
That there must be a fund that feeds into something like that.
Since we know that those people who are in charge of governing that space aren't there and probably will never get there.
Right.
And if they did start something like that, 50% of it might line their pockets.
What
is our way? No. What is our workaround? Are there people like us who are now in Canada, in the US, in UK, that can form this organization that might be for the Caribbean, for Jamaica, but outside of Jamaica, in a sense, and gets the funding that funds the things there? Is there a way to do that?
Okay, so I think that sometimes even the people who are in certain places of political power are also fighting a battle. Some fighting a battle within themselves, but also some fighting the battle to get sponsorship, just like we as artists are fighting the battle to bring in money to do what we do. Even with the best intentions, those persons within them have to fight within their own government to get the people with the money in the government to give them money to do certain things, as well as to get people from outside to give them money to do certain things, creative and within the arts realm. You understand? So there's that. But also, I think that we as people during the pandemic, COVID pandemic, we recognized the value of the arts, and it's almost like it's gone now again. But one of the things I like to tell people is think through if when we were in that lockdown for those 2 years or whatever long it was, we didn't have TikTok music and Afrobeat and Beyonce to listen to. We didn't have the video games to play, which were created by artists. We didn't have the movies to watch. We couldn't get to see Bridgerton. We didn't have Netflix. We didn't have all of those things. No Bob Marley to listen to. We would have gone stark, stirring, crazy. But the arts is that thing which saves us. That's the thing that that keeps us sane. It's the thing that gives us I think the French call it joie de vivre. And so the arts, and we know it, but it's just like if you're in a room and you're having the best time of your life, and suddenly all of the air is sucked out of that room, then you can think of nothing else but air. So that's kind of like what happened during the pandemic, where we were kind of forced to appreciate the arts, so to speak. And then now that everything is back on track again, it's gone. So do we need another pandemic? God, we don't.
No, please no. Please no.
I'm just saying that,
the wake up call.
Just remember.
I think what let me tell you what I am kind of guided by now, because I'm really in this area where I don't want to be pandering to people, to be begging for, right? I do know that working in a project-based way can help. you know, where you don't necessarily try to start big and say, okay, organization, but you start to make particular things happen, and those things can expand into other things, and before you know it, you get a set of people together who are helping to make things happen. There's something, Holgate and Harris, that we had started decades ago, which is a circle, which was supposed to have been a circle of artists who are using the skills to help the other artists manifest particular things. And of course, you know, we went in different directions and so on. But I think almost like a susu, or like a susu partner, creative partner is what you call it.
Yes, that's right.
Remember?
Yeah.
And we were there when we used to eat a whole you know, little Tokyo food and so. Yes, on a Sunday, yes. But I've always held on to the idea that, because that is a technology that comes from passed through our heritage, where we in community do the things for ourselves. It may not mean that you're going to get the big infusion of cash. It may not mean, but there's a way in which each of the skills that we would have in this particular community can help somebody else do the thing that they would have normally had to pay a lot for example. And it's I know at the same time, I know we probably need a big philanthropic kick as well, you know, in terms of burst of capital. But I do think there is a way in which we need to look towards each other, towards ourselves, and not in a kind of way where previously people say, I'm a friend, man, say, I'm going to do that for me for free, and then you never really get to can buy a dinner out of the work where you do. It's not like that at all.
Right.
But it's what kind of community that can we create where we pull on this Tallawah-ness in service of each other. And as I say it, a part of me is cringing because the volunteer kind of culture in Jamaica when it comes to the arts is rife. There are literally, like, I don't know, okay, there's one company that I know of that salaries people, Holgate. There is another company. The Ashe company. There are other companies who will pay you when you perform as dancers. But where is the space where you are actually salaried every day, all the time, for coming to rehearsal, teaching, that kind of stuff? And I want to buck that trend. So I don't want to talk about the solution being in community. There's a responsibility that those who have put themselves up to govern are supposed to have, and they're supposed to have a responsibility to the arts in a particular kind of way that has to do with the funding and the vision of that. I don't want to say, all right, since that now happened, we have to just do it ourselves. Again, both things are supposed to be happening at the same time.
In a way, we kind of have to. So two things. Right. One is that we kind of have to do it because at the end of the day, we are doing it for the nation, but we are doing it for ourselves as well. We're artists because we're called to be. We're artists because we want to be. And we're going to parallel it. Somebody might ask you, all right, so somebody who grew up, and if you can answer me this question, though, please, because I really love to know. You grew up and you said, I want to be a lawyer. Right? I want to be a lawyer. And you go study your book and you do all of these things and you push through and you come through and you finish law school and you send on your things and you're trying to get into this law school and this, you know, all of these things out there. And you decide you're going to set up your own thing or you set up your own thing, whatever it is, right? There are laws and policies in place that support your development and your track and your trajectory. As a lawyer, why is it that so we don't necessarily have the same kind of structure? We don't have the same roots of progression to get, you know, being that artist. But somebody might ask you, if this person want to be a lawyer and you want to be an artist, why must give you something to go do all of these things? Why must the government give you something special to go and do all of these things when I'm not giving this lawyer or this doctor, the doctors who have to pay $1 million per semester or whatever it is to, you know, why us as artists are we that?
But very different. Those are two. For me, they're very different, right?
Yeah.
Because they're those lawyers and those doctors are gonna get paid by other people. And sometimes the things that we're doing is for the social good. The things that we're doing is for the furthering of the culture. It is for mental health. This is for all these other things. And we're not getting paid.
So don't do it then. Make the culture go suffer. Don't do it then. Go and find a real job.
But look at it. It is suffering.
The devil don't need no advocate. But
Right.
yes,
So there's something that,
Maybe I'm just being my own advocate.
you know, aha.
with what you both were
No.
saying. With what you both were saying, you see, we've tried it. I think we tried it when we used to meet and have the liquor food on Sunday.
Yeah.
And we're thinking small. I think we need to think bigger. Sometimes we ask for what we think we can get and not what we really want. And I think now we are all connected enough, and the people that we know are all connected enough with other Jamaicans around the world that we could probably do this idea in a bigger way. This creative partner in a bigger way, where we're registering a company or several companies or whatever that can access funding, that can foundations, plural, that can access funding, and that we can fund what we want to do, and also fund and have the potential to fund other people, to have them apply for funding from what it is that we do.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm planting this seed in all of our heads because it in man already. You know, that we call the people that we know who are in Europe, or who are who are Jamaicans just like us, who are in Europe, who are in Canada, in the US, in other parts of the Caribbean, in the Middle East, in Asia, or whatever, because we're all over the place. And then we start to have these discussions about how what is available there, what is available there, what is available there, and how can we legally come together and make these things happen, to fund the things that we want to fund, and to create opportunities for the people that we see need opportunities.
I think two things with what you said, Mikey Harris, a while ago. It's very important for these kinds of organizations, I think, to be artist run and artist led and artist centered, because we do have experience with, we have examples of, organizations that come up that say that they're doing particular things. And I mean, they're doing some stuff, but because it's not coming from the root of the benefit of the artist first, then it becomes exploitative. It either feels exploitative, or in certain instances is very exploitative, but it's only, or one of few spaces where people can go to get a little funding, to do a little thing, to travel a little place, and so on. So, I mean, I am with you. I am with you in terms of circling back. It is supposed to be the year of circling back, actually. Circling back to find that idea of what we had our finger on it before, but as you said, we were thinking small, because we never had the kind of experiences under our belt that we have now. You know what I mean? And the network has now grown for each of us. So I think, the next thing is that when Mikey Holgate was putting on the horns and being the advocate, right? And was asking about, what's the difference between the lawyer, or why shouldn't I support the lawyer, but I must support the artist. That is the importance of equity and an understanding of equity. So we're not really equal in the sense that we're not on equal footing. There is a way in which we have been held back because of the consciousness that does not believe in the arts, except for hobby and entertainment, and so. And I think that is the comeback. That is the argument to say equity is what is important. You recognize where that gap is. You fill that gap up so that people are on equal footing, and then you move forward. There's a lot of stuff happening now where the strides made, let's say, since 2020, particularly since the killing of George Floyd, and the subsequent actions afterwards. A lot of that diversity, equity, and inclusion push has been, right now is being pulled back in the States in particular, but it's not only in other places too. But for a society as ours that has been built on inequity, we owe it to ourselves. We are supposed to insist on equity for all of the vulnerable. And when you think about those two career paths, the more vulnerable one is the artist one. You know what I mean? So I think if anybody come to you again with that Holgate, just tell them, just say equity, and just drop the mic and walk away.
And show them that meme. Show them the meme with the tall person looking over the fence, and then the shorter person who needs to get a footstool. Yeah.
It's not the same race for everyone.
One of the things that concerns me is how we, as artists, sometimes we just want to be artists. You understand? But we have a responsibility to do more than that. Meaning, as artists, we also have to be business people. As artists, we also have to be politicians. As artists, we have to do so many different things in order to be the artists that we want to be. You know? And I think Professor Nettleford is a good example of that, you know, and he did his politicking and he did his commercializing of himself in order to be the artist that he wanted to be, the academic and stuff like that. And so that's something very important for us. And my other thing is that we now have to not become so much of the other thing that it takes away from our capacity
100%.
to be the artist.
Yes.
And
exactly.
sometimes that is what is happening. Because remember, you know, we're trying to do this performing arts organization and stuff like that. But sometimes the kind of people wrangling that you have to do, the kinds of negotiating you have to do, the kind of begging and pleading, the kinds of playing the game.
Small up yourself,
up yourself and then being a big bad aggressor and all of those things that you have to do. It takes away from you being that vulnerable creative who wants to create something that touches and impacts lives. And so sometimes you just have to make a decision, and very often, well, not very often, every single time, if I have to make that decision, that really strong decision, because I see, you know, this is gonna divide me or to make me less of an artist, I'm gonna choose to be the artist rather than that. If I die as an artist without having got my voice to the world in as big a way as I want to, I would rather do that than to go out there and be this other thing than the artist. So
I mean, you know. I remember I was telling somebody in the same Canada experience, I was recounting to him that how difficult it is out here because you often have to be advocate, teacher, you know, same things you were saying, Mike. And he was saying, yes, but there are those who advocate who don't have your choreographic skill and who don't have your choreographic impulse. So what you need to do is focus on the choreography. You can assist maybe with the advocacy, you can help to guide the advocacy, but you need to focus on the choreography, and somebody else needs to focus on the advocacy. But he's saying that from the standpoint of being in a space that has all of those things delineated, where you can find you can find a cadre of people who are able to deal with the administration part fairly, right? And will not gyp you and will manage your business well, so you can sit and make, right? But out here and actually in the rest of the region also, it's really difficult to be able to just sit in that crucible for yourself. You have to be advocating for yourself. The good thing, for example, is that I see, all right, at Edna Manley College, you have the arts management degree program. It's not well subscribed, but they get excellent training. So when they go, they make differences, right? Whether they're working with individual people or they go into event management or whatever. There is at UA as well, arts and cultural enterprise management or so on. I think up at UA Mona. And so there are moves towards training people in how to do this. But in the meantime, there's a gap between when those people are ready to go into the marketplace and work with you as an artist and where you have to still keep doing. You know, it takes a toll. It takes a toll. I am like you. I will be the artist. And then, you know, if there's a choice between being the artist and being the wrangler, I'll be the artist. I've also been in a space where, because I'm so used to being the wrangler and the artist, I am a terrible artist to manage because I don't trust easily, and I will see what I can and what I can't do. And the manager says, you know, I needed to do this now. I said, no, I can't make it in such a short time, you know, but then the manager is speaking. Manager speak to the person who wants me to do the thing in a short time. So those kind of things also have to be ironed out because I'm so used to being everything myself. But I do believe, though, in terms of this kind of fledgling grouping, that now there are people who have been graduated from some of these programs who would be very, very good in terms of helping to build out the administrative aspect of it. So the artists themselves don't have to be worried about the administrative part. I think now we might have graduated enough persons who are ready. And who are able,
even if they're not ready, they are ready to be ready, which is much further than where we were before.
For sure. Yeah, they're willing, ready and willing. It's also, I was just thinking also about the importance, once again, I'm pulling it back to like cultural spaces, the importance of cultural spaces that are not of presentation, but are of process. So like spaces that are there for you to make in, for you to, you know, that have studios, that are, you can shut them off, but you can also invite people into your processes, because those are the places that artists needs to be able to retreat into to make. Not every artist has a home that can allow you to do that, right? So it's having these kinds of spaces, and this is not around the country, that are not just for presentation, because a lot of times cultural spaces we think about performance, show, put on one show, put on one dance, whatever. But it's those kind of spaces, I think, that also needs to be created. As I said, crucible, those sort of bubbles, safety bubbles for artists to
Yeah, you need the
get
incubator
vulnerable.
space and the woodshed space, and
Right,
where you can experiment, and
right.
you can form, and you can break down and reform and decide what
And
direction you're going and who you're going to
the
become.
Yeah.
Institute of Jamaica and the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, you know, those spaces. We need all of those spaces that contribute to the culture and to who we are. And you see, we circle back and reach cultural spaces again, and it's on
But
me
even,
to
but Mike, even
wrap up
those
our
places,
discussion.
yeah, you're gonna wrap up. But
Oh,
as I say, quick, no, we probably should. We're
Before I wrap up,
I could, you know, because you know I could talk to you for the
yeah,
whole
man,
night.
we wrap up. But even those spaces that have,
I think we're actually going to have to do
A
make
part
3
two.
episodes out of this one
no, we
chat.
can do one. We can do one because we have
Okay.
enough other things to talk about.
Yeah, what's up
But like
about me?
places like the Institute of Jamaica that is holding so much research
Right.
that nobody is doing anything with, because they don't have the people to do it, and they
Yeah.
don't have
It's the
the direction.
connection, Mike. That's the thing for me. It's the connection. That's why I will forever talk about roots of progression. Roots of progression. So if you're starting as a young person who want to dance, where do you go to school? Where do you go to high school? Where do you go to college? Then where do you go after college? What is the space that you step into to be an intern? And then what is the space? And the same thing for a filmmaker, the same thing for a visual artist. For the most part, most of our creatives, they're either on a
Well, on your chip up, Mike. And it was
come
getting
back
to
and
this.
teach or to become teacher artists,
Right.
or do you hear me?
Yeah, go on again now.
Can
Is
you
it
now say it
or?
again?
Yeah. So most of those people are either on a trajectory to become teachers of artists who, you know, they're on that trajectory, or they're on the path to become going to commercials and to do advertising and, you know, that type of stuff. But there are no roots of progression to becoming an artist. And until we develop that, so maybe all we need to do is spend some time and develop those roots, or rather connect those roots, because the root is already there. Anything that's been done, anything that man has done, man can do. Right? And there's somebody who has traveled. Our Garth Fagan choreographed the Lion King, Jamaican. He's a Jamaican who choreographed the Lion King. What's a route that he took? Rex Nettleford become who he become. The Ashe company is a model that does the arts as a thing. So there are these models and there are these roots. We now have to connect these roots and present at least 3 to 5 of these roots to young people and solidify them in the creative and cultural ethos, so that people understand it, and so people will want to buy into it, and government will want to buy into it, and the business people will want to fund it, because they see that it makes sense. And if it don't make sense, nobody not gonna want to do it, no matter how much them love to see we jump up and down on stage, which is what some of them think we're doing, or no matter how much them think say the little something with splash dash on the palette or the whatever is good, or the photos we take. And in our next podcast, we will need to talk about the new artists emerging who are the content creators, but that's for another story.
Before we close. Okay, so there's 2 things, right? I want to, when you're asking about a place where I've seen it exist before, you know what I forgot? I forgot about my connection to Cuba, and how those roots of progression and how that governmental support and everything is so well set up in a country that's not a capitalist country, right? But has the best of everything in the world exported to the rest of the world, particularly when it comes to dance and to music and so on. That's a model that I think, outside of political differences or whatever, that is a model for success that I don't think Jamaica has used enough in terms of figuring out how, right, to work along with best practices. The second thing is what we have. For me, it's a sustainability of the thing, Mike. So even if we, for example, deal with the roots of progression and we create opportunities and we work that out, the sustainability comes when you have, and I'm going to keep saying it, when you have governmental, it's not even just buying in or buying for a time, because what happens is we have all of these individuals who do these amazing things, and they find those roots of progression from themselves, but it's not systematized. So Usain did so many amazing things of himself, believed in himself. Tessan, Dalton Harris, we have the stars, we have the individual stars, and once they make it, then you hear everybody holding on to the coattails now, trying to ride with this meteor, right? But the point is a systematization of that for the sustainability, and that really only comes through how because I said government, because government has its tentacles in everything, all around the place, and so that is one of the ways in which something can be sustained across time. So it's that is my little caveat in terms of, yeah, man, we definitely have to see the roots of progression are already there, but if we're still seeing it as, or if they're still seeing it as, yeah, man, individual person, we just tag on as Tallawah Jamaicans, individual person, them do that, yeah, man, we love it, we big them up, and then we've gone back to our regular lives, then, and it's not systematized in a big way, it's, the effort will die down after a while. Okay, may not say no more.
Okay.
It's that systematization that matters. It really is. It really is, because without it, then as I say, it don't make sense. And we need to make it make sense, because we're artists and we're not through with being artists,
Nope.
I'd say we're probably middle tier artists. I don't know what kind of artists we are, but we're not ready to give up on the whole thing yet. We want to make that change. And so I am just this conversation. I think that this conversation is a good jumping off point, not just for more talk, but also more action. I think, and I do believe something will come from this, with us talking amongst ourselves, but also anyone who listens to us, who can say, maybe some 16, 13-year-old is going to listen to this and say, oh, I am that person. I am that person who's going to make that change. Or it might be a 70-year-old who said, I have enough thing, I've done enough in my life, and now I want to make that change. It's, I think that somebody will listen, just like how we're talking and listening to each other. And so I'm grateful. Thank you, Michael Sean Harris. Thank you, Neila Ebanks. Thank you, Michael Holgate.
Thank you, Michael Holgate.
Thank you, sir. Clap yourself.
I'm grateful for this conversation, and I'm looking forward to all the other conversations that we have. And then maybe we'll see anybody else we're going to tag in and bring in and include on our conversation around culture around this place, the Tallawah Table.
Aye.